Welcome everyone to my next 2.0 battle report. This time we've got Sylvan Elves up against Highborn Elves again, playing against my son for Christmas Day. A lot of Highborn Elves in this part of the world, so you'll probably see more than your fair share of battle reports against them. Apologies for that. So today's game we've got Counter Thrust, and we're playing one of the new scenarios with King of the Hill. So it should be a good game to learn some of the new rules, and it's quite a good game for showcasing some of those new things and some of my stupid mistakes that I'm still making, trying to remember all the changes that have happened. So having a quick look at my Sylvan Elf roster, trying out something quite new this time around. Been really struggling to fit in the kind of characters that I want for the points given. Saw quite a nice build for a Blade Dancer Chieftain on the forum the other day, so we've slipped him in to give us a good combat option there. For a BSB, we've kept our 2 Druids. I'm pretty sold on running the 2 Druids with Shamanism and Cosmology, but I've always felt that I needed more spells. I was eyeing up Barrier Maidens, but that would have still left me with a character short to be the general. So for today's game, the plan is to try out a Dryad Ancient with Druidism. I had originally been eyeing up taking 2 of our hereditary spells and trying to do some shenanigans with our movement, but the matchup for today really did favour the 4 spells that I usually go with from Cosmology and Shamanism, so didn't really work out that way. Also, the main game aim for this list is to try and address my issues with scoring. So we've gone with a big Dryad block with the Ancient in there. That's quite a robust unit. I'll take Summer Growth on the Dryad as well, so that I can bring back bodies if need be. And the other big scoring unit there is a unit of Thicker Beasts. So I'm hopeful that 2 solid scoring units there will hopefully be helpful. And then we've got our third archer unit. Our third scoring unit is the archer unit. Got 4 fast vanguarding units there with double Heath Riders and double Kestrels. Gone for a lot more elite shooting in this game with 2 units of 9 Sentinels and 10 Pathfinders. Yeah, we just wanted to try out having a 3rd elite archer unit. Haven't got as many in core with the big Dryad block, and overall this list seems to have a much better feel to it than some of the previous lists I've run. Just not quite sure whether 9 Blade Dancers is the right balance. Would have quite liked to have got a magical standard in there, maybe the Rending Banner or a Flaming Banner, but anyway, we'll see how this list pans out, but I'm pretty hopeful that this is going to be one worth trying in a few other matchups as well. So now having a look at my son's Highborn Elves, he's also trying out a number of new things. This is his first game of 2.0. He just had a quick read through the rules before today's game, so he's very much learning as he's going, but he's making use of some of the new items available to try out a Prince on a Griffin. Quite a good combat threat that. Loses some of its appeal with me not having any cannons or anything, but yeah, definitely a threat that I'll have to watch out for. Next unit there, the Commander of Canrag Tower for his BSB, is I think an outstanding option. I think we're going to see a lot of these, and along with that spear, he's a serious threat. And then he wanted to kind of improve on what Erdem had done with his magic phase, and he's brought a Wizard Adept with Pyromancy, so he can get a couple of magic missiles in there, as those are always very nasty for me. And then a similar kind of core with archers and spears, but he's gone with 23 Seaguard, wanting to try out their new cover fire rule. So that'll be quite interesting, as well as the fire in 3 ranks. That's a extra few bow shots that my army really doesn't like. Then he's got the big unit of Swordmasters with the War Banner of Rhymer, which I think is a very, very strong option, and definitely that's a unit that's going to cause me some problems. 3 bolt throwers, again, they're a real issue. I really find those a problematic issue for playing against Highborn Elves. And then a Fire Phoenix and 5 Grey Watchers, who will be interesting to see how they go with their shooting Fey Miasma or whatever it's called. So an interesting looking list that I'm looking forward to playing. In Magic, I've got Swarm of Insects and Awaken the Beast on my Shamanism Mage, pretty much my go-to options there, and same with Ice and Fire and Perception of Strength on my Cosmology Druid. Pretty much every game I think that is going to be the core of my Magic. Trying out with my Dryad Ancient, Summer Growth, and the flipped over card is our Hereditary spell for the movement. Ended up mainly just taking it in case one of my elite arch units I want to protect with the ward save, or possibly if a situation arises where I need that little bit extra movement. But I anticipate early rounds I'm going to be using Ice and Fire and Swarm of Insects, and once combat starts the double strength buff is very, very good. And then Summer Growth's quite a good reserve spell in case I need to focus healing any of my units, so feels like a much better balance to my Magic. In return, I don't think I have a picture of my son's Magic cards, but I believe he has got Pyroclastic Flow and Flaming Swords for his Pyro spells, and on his BSB he has got Raven's Wing, Healing Waters, and the Hereditary spell for the Highborn Elves. So he's also got a very useful selection of spells there. Raven's Wing I think is particularly nasty, doing the sweeping attacks from that, as well as the Flaming Phoenix is absolutely brutal. And Flaming Swords is also a nasty spell for me, especially if he targets my Thicket Beasts and gets his rerolls to wounds. So good strong Magic phases hopefully from both sides here. So I managed to win the roll to pick sides, and my son asked me to deploy first. So we go on to deployment. You can see that in deployment I'm pretty much playing my same usual game where I'm looking to deploy well forward and force him back in the centre. So we deployed our Heath Riders in the centre first, and then the Kestrels on the left and the right to push him backwards as far as we could, and then as soon as 6 watt drops were down, then we dropped everything. So moving from left to right, we've got the Kestrels as I mentioned. Next to them our big Dryad unit. Originally we've deployed them there to make use of the leadership bubble, but also we're eyeing up the building directly in front of us, which my son picked as the terrain feature for him for King of the Hill. My feature is the forest that they are sitting in, so they're defending that and also in a position to go to the building, so quite a strong position there I think for them. Beside that we've got our Blade Dancer unit with the BSB there again, looking to just have a strong leadership bubble there for all our archer units. Unit of Sentinels in behind the Blade Dancers, and my Thicket Beasts in behind the Dryads. Then across from that we have our Heath Riders that I talked about already that are centrally positioned there with our other unit of Sentinels behind them. And on the far right hand side we have our unit of Archers in the field. Love that they're not flammable anymore. A unit of Heath Riders and a unit of Kestrels all pushed forward. So that was my deployment there, with our Pathfinders still left to scout. In return, starting from left to right, my son's put down a bolt thrower in the corner there, and his unit of Archers behind the wall with the Phoenix and behind those Spearmen next to them. Across a little bit further we have his unit of Seaguard, his 5 Grey Watchers in behind that. Next to that his Swordmaster unit with his BSB in there and his Mage, the Griffin next to that, and then 2 more bolt throwers. So after Vanguards and Scouting, you can see I put my Pathfinders in the forest on the left hand side. Basically my plan is going to be very similar to what I did against Erdem. Quite interesting how both him and Curtis, my son, have deployed the same way. So I want to take out the bolt thrower and the archers on this side and the 2 bolt throwers on the other side. So we vanguarded the Heath Riders and the Kestrels forward, ready to hunt that bolt thrower there. And then on the other side we have vanguarded up our Heath Riders and our Kestrels to take out those 2 bolt throwers. So like I said, very much the same game plan. So that takes us on to Sylvan Elves turn 1. So turn 1, we carry out the plan that we were just talking about. So the Kestrels and the Heath Riders move right up in front of that bolt thrower. We can take that out, and then if we have any shooting left over, we can put it onto the archers, and the Kestrels are in a great position to charge them as well. The Pathfinders and the Sentinel unit there with my Shamanism Mage are in a great position as well. We can use Swarm of Insects on the archers or the bolt thrower, and we can put a lot of shots into them. The Pathfinders with their +2 to hit shooting will be able to take the archers out from behind the wall quite well. We decided to move our Dryad bunker up that left-hand side of the building, mainly because we want to stay right away from his unit of Swordmasters, so don't really at this stage want them to garrison that building, although we may still have that option later. And that's why the thicker beasts have moved forward, as they could well be a good option to go into that building. And the Blade Dancer unit there is mainly just keeping the leadership bubble in place for all those elite archers that are otherwise leadership 8. And then moving across, you can see our Cosmology Mage and Sentinels have just moved up so that they can start picking off where they need to. We can shoot a little bit at the Griffin or the Swordmasters or the Sea Guard from that position, and we can also shoot at the bolt throwers on the hill. And a little bit further across from there, you can see the archers in the field. They can shoot the bolt throwers from there, so they don't need to move. And the Kestrels and the Heath Riders have done the same as what I did on the left hand side. So, fairly aggressive play turn 1. Quite happy with how deployment has gone. Moving on to Magic, turn 1 Magic, we draw Flux card number 5, which gives us, after adding on our Veil tokens, a 9/5 Magic phase, which is quite handy. We start with a Swarm of Insects on the Bolt Thrower. Curtis lets that one go through, leaves the Bolt Thrower on 1 wound, and it's also got the penalty to shoot next turn if I don't manage to kill it. So fairly handy start there. And then we move on to our shooting phase, as I failed to inflict anything else through magic. Our Heath Riders shoot off the bolt thrower, and then the Kestrels shoot off an archer. So relatively helpful so far. Then the Pathfinders, they go ahead and shoot the archers as well and kill 2 more. Had hoped I might do a little bit better there. And then the Sentinels with the Shamanism Mage, they shoot at the Phoenix and put a wound on him. And then on the far right hand side, the Heath Riders put a couple of wounds on the closest bolt thrower. Kestrels only managed to put 1 wound on, so therefore we've got to use the archers in the field as well, and they destroy that bolt thrower. And then the last unit of shooting, our Sentinels and our Cosmology Mage, shoot at the other bolt thrower on the hill, but unfortunately we leave it still on 3 wounds. But sorry, it should be on 1 wound. I think we realised that Curtis had put down the wrong dice. So pretty strong turn 1, fairly happy with removing 2 bolt throwers and putting a few extra wounds on. So we move on to Highborn Elves turn 1, and unfortunately I've just realised that I failed to take any pictures of Curtis's movement phase. In movement, he moved the Flame Phoenix over in behind the building. He turned his Grey Watchers around to be able to shoot at the Kestrels on the far right hand side, and the Swordmasters, the Griffin and the Sea Guard all just shuffled forward. Fairly cautiously, really too cautiously in my opinion. So then we go on to Magic. His Magic phase, he draws Flux card number 4. After tokens, he has a 7/5 Magic phase. So first he goes for a Pyroclastic Flow on my Thicket Beasts. Rolled significantly high. Unfortunately for him, I let it go through and he failed to wound my Thicket Beasts at all. So I think he threw 3 or 4 dice at that and didn't inflict any damage at all. And then from there, he failed to cast his Oaken Throne on 1 die, and then I used all my dice to stop his racial spell, so no effect at all in magic for him. So in shooting, his archers shot at my dryads, I think it was, and he failed to wound any of them. Probably should have been shooting at my elite archers. Then his sea guard, they took aim and shot at my sentinels on the right hand side, managed to kill one of them. Then his 5 grey watchers, which I think are a very, very cool new unit, shot at my kestrels. They failed to wound them, but they did get the Fey miasma off on them. And the bolt thrower shot at the kestrels as well and failed to wound. And that was the end of his turn, which was very unfortunate for him, as it was very uneventful. And brings us on to Sylvan Elves turn 2. So on turn 2, our kestrels charge into the archers on the left hand side. The pathfinders, the dryads, and the sentinels all on that right hand side just move forward. Thicket beasts are positioning themselves ready to enter the building, and the blade dancers move more into the center of the map. And on the right hand side, the kestrels charge the remaining bolt thrower, and the heath riders just shuffle around so they can shoot the grey watchers at short range. While the archers in the field just shuffle back a bit. You can see here from this picture his movement that he really was far too cautious with the 2 blocks of infantry and the griffin there. They really need to be coming forward and getting into combat. And then that brings us on to magic. So magic for turn 2, I get flux card 8. So after tokens, that gives me a 10-7 magic phase with 1 token still in the pool. We cast Ice and Fire on the Griffin with 4 dice. Curtis lets that go through and it fails to wound. Then we try an Oaken Throne on 2 dice and he dispels that with 2 dice. And then we try a Swarm of Insects on his... Can't remember who I cast it on, but with my remaining 4 dice he dispelled it with his 5. So totally uneventful magic phase for me. All we managed to achieve was getting our cosmology token ready. And then in shooting, my pathfinders shoot his spearmen and kill 2 of those. Then my sentinels with the shamanism mage, they shoot at the spearmen as well and only kill 1. So my successful turn 1 is turning into a serious flop turn 2. On the right hand side, my heath riders shoot the grey watchers and kill 1. The archers who are in the field, they shoot the sea guard and kill 1. Then the sentinels with the cosmology mage shoot the sea guard and kill 1. So very, very poor shooting phase for me. I think in average phase I would have killed probably twice as many as I did. But in return, the kestrels do a fantastic number on the archers there charging in. We kill 8 archers and suffer no wounds in return. The archers break, they run through the spearmen, don't panic them, and the kestrels overrun into the spears. So fairly successful combat there. On the right hand side, the kestrels kill the bolt thrower, but they fail to overrun into the grey watchers by 1 inch. It wasn't that far. I think it was only a 7 that they needed, and I got a 6 or something like that. So it was a little bit unfortunate, as they're going to cause me some problems later on in the game. And then that brings us on to Highborn Elves turn 2. So turn 2, he moves his Flame Phoenix over my Dryad unit, manages to kill 2 with his sweeping attacks. I think he probably should have killed a few more than 2, but he was a bit unlucky with his dice rolls there. And then in remaining moves, you can see his archers have rallied. His sword masters now decide they need to come forward and get into the game, so they move far more aggressively. The grey watchers have just moved in behind the building to continue shooting at the kestrels. The sea guard have turned around to be able to shoot the kestrels as well, and the griffin has also pushed forward quite aggressively on that right hand side, so starting to push a bit harder at me now. I think he's possibly 1 turn too late though. In his magic phase, he draws Flux card 8, which gives him a 10-7 magic phase. So he starts off with a pyroclastic flow. He starts off with a Raven's Wing, which I dispel through 5 dice to dispel that one. Then he goes for Pyroclastic Flow on 3 dice to my Thicket Beast, and he fails to cast it, which really hurts. I think he rolled double 1, so he does get those 2 dice back. He then casts Oaken Throne on 2 dice, and I failed to dispel it using 2, so that was pretty disappointing. And then he gets his Hereditary Spell, Favour of Melodies, off as well with his last 3 dice, so much more successful magic phase for him this time around. So that brings us on to our shooting phase. The Highborn Elves shoot at the Kestrels and fail to wound, but again I fail my resilience test, so I'll have -1 to hit. Then the Sea Guard shoot at the Kestrels as well and kill off 1 Kestrel. Fortunately, we pass our panic test, which then brings us on to combat. The Kestrels do a fantastic number on the Spearmen, just as they did on the Archers before. They kill off 6, 9 Spearmen there. They are steadfast, and they manage to hold, and they turn around and face me. So a little bit disappointing. I'd hoped I might break them and overrun into the back of the Archers, but such is life. We'll kill them off next turn and then overrun into the Archers anyway. Well, I won't overrun into them, but we'll catch them soon enough. So it brings us on to Sylvan Elves turn 3. So on turn 3, the Kestrels charge the Grey Watchers, and then I realise I have forgotten that the Sea Guard can lay down cover fire, so they get to do a stand and shoot cover fire. They shoot off another Kestrel, which leaves just 1 remaining. The Dryads charge into the flank of the Spearmen. I just want to make sure that I kill those. The Archers on the left hand side, the Pathfinders and the Sentinels, move into short range, as well as the Sentinels that were further around on the right hand side to the Phoenix. I want to make sure that we kill that off. That also gets my Sentinels out of line of sight of the Griffin. You can see that the Blade Dancers have charged into the Swordmaster unit, taking the opportunity there to kill his Pyromage. We also should do a fair amount of damage. With being on the charge, we go first. Paired weapons means our offensive skill is higher than him, so we're going to be hitting on 2s. We've also got the Dragon Staff for a Dragon's Breath, which means we should come very close to killing that unit before it gets to go. In elf on elf, I think who charges wins in most combats, unless it's going to be with Spearmen. You can see the Archers have marched forward to get out of line of sight of the Griffin, and the Heath Riders have just run around behind. They're going to throw a few shots into the Griffin, just wanting to be behind the hill to avoid the Sea Guard shooting them to pieces. And lastly, the Thicket Beasts have moved into the building to garrison it, now that they can safely avoid the Swordmasters. So there's an overview of how the battlefield looks. You can see that we've pretty much got entirely onto his side. We're holding his terrain feature with the building there for the secondary, and the Blade Dancers have intercepted the Swordmasters, keeping him out of the forest feature that he's gunning for. So pretty happy with where things are sitting at the moment. Feeling pretty confident that we're in for a big win at this stage. In Magic, we draw Flux card number 1. So after tokens, that gives us a 6/4 Magic phase with 1 token still in the bank. So first up, we get off Perception of Strength. We threw 3 dice at that, and Curtis decided to let it go, as I could always cast it again with my Shamanism Mage. And so then I go for Ice and Fire on his Phoenix with 3 dice. He has 4 to try and dispel it, but it still goes through. and we get 2 wounds off on the Phoenix, which is fantastic. Means that should definitely go down in the shooting phase. So in shooting, my Pathfinders shoot at short range and kill the Phoenix. So ended up with a little bit of overkill. The Sentinels there with the 2 Druids, they shoot into the Archers and kill off 3 of them. And that is the end of the shooting phase. In combat, my Dryads and Kestrels easily make short work of the Spearmen before they get to go. Them being destroyed within 6 inches causes the Archers to panic, but they don't run off the board, unfortunately. In combat on the other side, the Kestrel kills 2 Grey Watchers, but unfortunately they do a wound in return. So with my charge and 2 versus his 1 wound, I'm not able to win combat by enough, and he holds. And then I have a total brain fart and totally mess up with what I'm doing on my ballet dancers. So firstly, I forget his mage is on the right hand corner and I don't allocate any attacks onto him. Secondly, I forget to use my breath weapon, and so we don't kill any of them with that either. And then lastly, I also have some bad luck, and on my 20 something attacks I think I rolled like 7 ones to hit. So all up, we do kill a huge number of Swordmasters, but we lose 8 Blade Dancers, and that is really bad, as it means on his turn he's going to be able to kill the last remaining guy, and I'm not going to be in a position to be able to resurrect any with Druidism. So yeah, that was a really stupid bad move on my part. So while it's going to mean that Swordmaster's unit is in a fair bit of trouble, it's not nearly in as much trouble as it should have been. So pretty disappointed that I made another real beginner's mistake. Forgetting things like that is going to cost me a lot of games. So that brings us on to turn 3 for the Highborn Elves. So starting with his Flame Phoenix, of course it comes back to life. So that's a little bit of a pain for me. In other moves, he doesn't really have an awful lot he can do. The Archers run off the board, the Grey Wardens are in combat, the Swordmasters are in combat, the Seaguard just turn around and they're going to continue to shoot. I think this time they're going to probably pick off my Heath Riders or Archers. And the Griffin Rider just maneuvers as I've managed to get everything out of arc for him. In Magic, he draws Flux card 7, so after tokens he's got a 9/6 Magic phase. He tries to do a Raven's Wing on 4 dice. I throw all 6 to stop that. There's no way I want that Phoenix and doing its sweeping attacks along with the Raven's Wing. So then he's pretty much able to do what he likes from there. So he goes for Flaming Swords on his Seaguard, using the attribute to bring a Swordmaster back to life. And then he tries his Racial Spell on just 2 dice. I have no idea why he tried to get it off on 2. He does fail though with 1 of those dice, I believe. With a 1, which means he's able to cast Healing Waters on his Swordmasters, I think it was, and brings another Grey Watcher back to life. So overall, he still managed to get 2 spells off, but yeah, he probably could have managed his dice a little bit better perhaps. And then that brings us on to the shooting phase. So with his Seaguard, he shoots at my Archers and kills off 2 of them. Probably a little bit unlucky and should have killed a little bit more. Then his Griffin, who had flown in behind my Sentinels, shoots them and shoots off 1. Which then brings us on to combat. This time around my Kestrel does a lot better against the Grey Watchers, kills off 3 of them, doesn't take any wounds in return, but they still hold. And the Belay Dancers, we go for our Ward Save Dance. We kill off only 1 Swordmaster by the looks of it. He kills off 1 Blade Dancer, and we manage to hold. with just my Lord left, but unfortunately he is going to be one dead Lord, as I can't bring back any more Blade Dancers to life, which is a real shame. I did manage to inflict a couple of wounds on the mage as well though. So that brings us on to Sylvan Elves turn 4. So turn 4, we move our Pathfinders and our Sentinels back. We want to finish off that Phoenix again that's come back, but we want to make sure that the Griffin can't do too much to me. The Sentinels there have also moved out of line of sight. The Kestrels are still in combat there with the Grey Watchers. The Thicket Beasts are still in the building. The Heath Riders have manoeuvred themselves back over the hill out of line of sight of the Sea Guard to have another go at shooting them. Just try and reduce the number of shots he can put on me. And the Archers have moved up into short range of the Griffin. And that is pretty much it. The Dryads, I think I might have gone for a long charge on them and failed. I can't remember. And the other Kestrel unit there had charged into the back of the Grey Watchers. So that brings us on to Magic. And in Magic we drew Flux card number 3. So after tokens that gave us an 8/5 Magic phase. So first we cast Oaken Throne on 2. Curtis let that one go through. We then cast Summer Growth on 4 dice. He stopped that. Sorry, he tried to stop that with 4 dice, but it still went through, and I think I used that to bring some wounds back on my Kestrels. We then got off Awaken the Beast as well for +1 toughness on our Blade Dancer Lord. Just hoping that toughness 4 is enough to stop him from dying, but more than likely it's a futile token gesture on my part. But anyway, we go on to the shooting phase. The Pathfinders shoot at the Phoenix and kill it again, and this time it won't be coming back. The Archer unit shoots into the Sea Guard and kills off 3 of them. The Heath Riders shoot at them as well and kill off 4, which is fantastic when there's only 5 shots. Then on to combat. In combat, my Blade Dancer Lord kills off 4 Swordmasters, but unfortunately they kill him. I think he only just got him. I think he only got through 3 wounds, so it really just shows you how much my carelessness in the previous combat has come back to hurt me. If I'd remembered to allocate more attacks onto the mage, or if I'd remembered to use my breath weapon, that pretty much would have ensured that there weren't enough Swordmasters left to have killed me. And I could have used my Summer Growth on that unit to bring some of those guys back to life. So yeah, bit of a shame that such a careless move has cost me, but I guess that's what I deserve. So the Swordmasters reformed to face the building. Curtis decided he's going to have a go at assaulting the building and try and get those Thicket Beasts out of the building, as otherwise I'm going to win the objective. And then that brings us on the other combat. My Kestrels, of course, kill the last Grey Warden and just turn to face the rest of his army. So that takes us on to the Highborn Elves' turn. So firstly he charges his Swordmasters to assault the building with the Thicket Beasts. The Sea Guard turn around so they can shoot at the Kestrels or the Heath Riders. The Lord on the Griffin also comes over, can take a shot, but also is now a threat in combat against each of those things. And then that brings us on to Magic, as that's all Curtis has got left. So in Magic he draws Flux card 2. So after tokens that gives him a 7/5 Magic phase with 1 token still in the bank. So firstly he goes for Flaming Swords on 5 dice on his Sea Guard unit. Sorry, might have been on a Swordmaster unit, sorry. And he fails to get that through as I throw all my 5 dice to stop it. He then uses his 2 remaining dice to try and get his hereditary spell off, and he fails to cast. So again, I think that was a crucial mistake from Curtis. With 7 dice, he could have gone with 4 on Flaming Swords. I probably still would have stopped it, but he still would have had 3 dice left to get his racial spell off, whereas this way probably aimed for a little bit too much and came up short, and ended up with no spells, which is a bit unfortunate for him. So it brings us on to the shooting phase. The Sea Guard shoot at the Heath Riders, and they kill off 3 of them. Again, that's probably pretty disappointing for him. I think he would have liked to have, well, I would have thought he would have probably killed the whole unit. And then we go on to combat. The Swordmasters against the Thicket Beasts. With the defensive skill of the building, he's only able to kill 1 Thicket Beast, inflicting 3 wounds, and in return I do 4 wounds back, but we continue combat. He maintains his assault, and we go on to Sylvan Elves turn 5. So turn 5, the Kestrels there fly away. They don't want any part of the Sea Guard, and more importantly the Griffin, killing them. I'll just take my 3 bow shots at the Sea Guard. The Dryads also back up to make sure that they are safe. The other Kestrel unit and the last of the Heath Riders also maneuver themselves back out of line of sight. We just keep shooting at those Sea Guard and try and thin them out. Which then takes us on to Magic. So in Magic, the flux card that I draw is number 7. So after tokens, that gives me a 9/6 magic phase with 1 token in remain in the pool for next turn. The first spell I go for is the Perception of Strength for +1 strength on my Thicket Beasts. I throw 4 dice at that, and Curtis lets it go through. And then I go for +1 toughness as well. With 5 dice. He throws all 6 dice at that and stops it. So we then go on to shooting. So we start with the 3 Kestrels. They shoot the Sea Guard and kill off 2 of them. Then my Archer unit, they shoot at the Sea Guard and just kill 1. They've really struggled to do their mathematical averages all game, unfortunately. The Sentinels, they shoot at the Sea Guard as well and kill 3, which is much more like it. Then the other Sentinel unit with the 2 Druids in it, they shoot at the Sea Guard and kill 2 more. And then my Pathfinders, they also shoot. This time they can only shoot though at the Griffin, as they can't quite see the Sea Guard around the building, and they inflict 2 wounds on the Griffin, which is pretty handy from them. And then we go on to combat. So in combat, Curtis is only able to inflict 1 wound on the Thicket Beast. This time we inflict 3 wounds back, and this time he decides to end his assault on the building, and he turns his Swordmasters away and faces them towards my side of the board. Which brings us on to Highborn Elves turn 5. So turn 5, he moves his Griffin up beside my archers, giving himself a wide arc there so that I can't get out of his line of sight. So he'll be able to charge one of my archer units next turn. He moves his Sea Guard forward so that they'll be able to shoot at me, and his Swordmasters slightly forward as well. We go on to Magic. He draws Flux card number 1. Gives him a 6/4 Magic phase. He goes for Pyroclastic Flow firstly on my Sentinels with 3 dice. We stop that with all 4 of ours. And then he casts Raven's Wing on his 2 Swordmasters. They fly over my Sentinel unit, killing 2 and forcing a panic test, which we fail, and we start running towards his top right hand corner, which brings us on to shooting. So shooting, his Sea Guard shoot further at the Sentinels and kill off 3 of those. So now they're going to be rallying on half leadership, and his Griffin also shoots off one of the archers in my archer unit. Brings us on to turn 6 for Sylvan Elves. We basically now I can look to conserve points. The Dryads move around a little bit more, but aren't really able to do much there. And you can see overview here, the Kestrels have come around the building so they can have a shot at the Swordmasters. The Pathfinders are in a position to shoot the Swordmasters or the Griffin, as are the Sentinels. And you can see that my 2 remaining Sentinels did not rally. The Kestrels have charged into the Seaguard. In fact, I think I might have gone for a long charge with the Dryads on the Seaguard and failed that charge. Which brings us, and the Archers turn around to face the Griffin. We've reformed there, so we've got slightly more ranks. Hopefully we will be steadfast and hold. So we go on to Magic. For Magic we draw Flux card number 4. So after doing tokens, I've got an 8/6 Magic phase. And we go for Ice and Fire on the Griffin, but he stops that. And then we go for Summer Growth, which goes through. So then we go on to Shooting. In Shooting, the 3 Kestrels kill off 1 Swordmaster. And then the 10 Pathfinders kill off the last one. Then the Sentinel unit with the 2 Druids shoots the Griffin. They take 1 wound off on him. And then we go on to Combat. The 3 Kestrels in the flank kill off all of the remaining Seaguard, as well as the Pyro Wizard. He runs from combat, runs through the building, and pops out the other side. Unfortunately, he's going to escape from me. It takes us on to turn 6. The Griffin charges the Archers and the BSB rallies, and then in combat the Griffin kills off 6 Archers. We're still steadfast and we hold, and that is the end of the game. So yeah, quite an interesting game. Got dominance fairly early, which allowed me to control the game really at that point with so much more shooting than him. I think in a similar way to the last game, it's a good matchup for me, and probably won the deployment, and that pretty much sealed the deal. So in the end we scored 3,330 points to Curtis's 1,309, so a difference of 2,021, as well as winning the objective, which gave me an 18-2 victory. So yeah, felt in general the list played reasonably well, stronger scoring options, but unfortunately Curtis made a few bad choices which gave me quite a big advantage. But pretty happy with this list, feels much more balanced than the previous version. I look forward to testing it out a little bit more in the near future. So hopefully over the holiday period we'll get a couple more games in, and we'll get a few more battle reports out to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. Like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.